Oh no, we're patching.
Ah, it was either this or the one with an outdated slogan on. So
I don't know. We're too corporate. Are we too corporate? I think it's probably worth starting at the beginning, really. I would say, like for a long time, we had this capability, right, to export apps to Intune. I think it was released, I don't know, when was it released? It was like 2023. And then yeah, that was really when I first saw, I think it was a webinar you guys did where Sumit was talking and introducing the capability for the Intune export. And then really that capability didn't really evolve too much, right? We just kept it as is. And then if you guys recall, we had oh God, it's about a year ago now. Actually, it might have been very close to this time a year ago when we were all in Cluj together, and we had our workshop really talking about how we were going to enhance our Intune capabilities, and we did it in the office. I think we had a couple of other guys there. Jelly was there, Ido was there, and we like designed this whole whiteboard, if you guys recall, around all these additional Intune capabilities, amongst other things that we wanted to do. And there's quite a lot in there. I can't remember if Intune app assignments was in there. I know it's definitely a lot of feedback we had from customers where you get apps to Intune, but what about the assignment? And I think that's where we really first started initially talking about how we can really automate Intune app assignments. And there was quite a few different things we discussed during that time.
yeah, it's been definitely been a interesting evolution of the feature. Because I think you're right, James. It was actually back in July 2022, I think, when we first had the export. It's definitely been a um, an evolution of what we export, and we've brought those improvements along the lines of um, detection methods and things like that. But it's interesting to see how, as I suppose as customers get more and more familiar with Intune, that sort of drives the increased demand around the new features. So we've had customers talk about scope tagging, but nobody's nobody's desperate for it, but it's a thing that some people use.
But then really how it evolved into being like an extension, a browser extension, like that was the other bit. And I think I always remember being at a lot of these conferences on the booth and seeing we were always seem to be next to Control Up or near Control Up, and they of course had their browser extension, which overlaid Intune, and it always got a lot of attention. There was always people crowded around that booth looking at this Intune overlay, and I don't know whether it was the value, like a combination of the value that was being provided inside that overlay, or it was just the fact that it was like everyone's familiar with Intune and it was just extending the Intune capabilities, and that was what people found exciting and interesting and compelling. And like it just got me thinking, like, yeah, why don't we just have it as an extension? Like I was walking along the streets in Switzerland at the time with the Workplace Ninja event in September last year, and I just sort of said to Samir, I think it needs to be a browser extension, because people just seem to really like that concept, and I think it would just work really well because we're doing stuff with Intune, so why not allow people to just stay in Intune and leverage that automation and save some time. And really that's where the idea was born. And then it was about, then it sort of turned into like a statement of work and having those conversations with potential developers.
Yeah, from a UX perspective, having the tool as something that sits on top of your Intune browser rather than having it sit inside the rest of the Remo 3 platform makes the experience in terms of UX a lot better, just because the way I think about UX is that every single interaction costs something, costs like a point or it costs a user something. So the less you have to navigate out of the initial environment into something else just makes the experience better.
Yeah, because I remember having sort of conversations with partners around, sort of the, what's next with the, with the export, and that sort of automatic assignment being something that they were very interested in. But even the partner would find it difficult to articulate, well, how would we achieve that automatic assignment from within the platform? Because the platform would then need to know, what security groups are available. It would need to know, all of those little intricacies of the of a deployment in that. And so to your point, Sabrina, it makes sense that you're already in the platform. The person who's using the Intune platform is the person who's going to be doing this. They don't necessarily want to be in our platform to do that work. So it just makes sense that it's a natural extension. We get the app into Intune, and we can offer a much richer set of features through the plugin around exactly what the partner wanted to see next. Probably better than we could have done within the platform.
Like getting apps into Intune is fine, but then that final mile of actually automating the actual assignment or supersedence of applications, which means like Remo 3 is then responsible for getting apps like onto those endpoints that users are using. I'm still not sure how comfortable I am having that risk and responsibility on Remo 3. And at the moment, I like how we've done it so far, where we just add value and save time and enable customers to do more with less clicks, to actually do the assignment themselves. So we sort of haven't taken that away from them. But I don't know, still in the future we could, there's still options there to automate that for low risk apps if customers want it, right? The combination between semi-automated and fully automated.
I think it's worth calling out at this point, basically the way we solved this problem of the app assignment and the way we ensure the auditability and traceability of these actions, as there was quite an interesting technical challenge which we had to solve for Intune Boost. So basically Intune Boost is leveraging two types of authentications. One, which authenticates against our central authorization system, and then the user who is logged into Intune, the context the Entra ID context syncs with what is already present in Intune and within the plugin. So the end user making the assignments, it's using this on behalf flow. So all the audit trails will be present in Intune in terms of like who did the assignment against what apps, against what security groups, which is it was quite an important aspect, and it was one of the initial pillars of this product. So we had this in mind from the very beginning, that this is something which we want to achieve. And comes on top of what you said, James, on the automatic assignment, that for now there's full traceability in terms of who's owning those actions.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, because if you go into the Intune audit logs, and you will see that it's not just like a Remo 3 deployed to assign these apps. It's actually the specific user that was using the extension at the time. So yeah, that full audit trail. And we also didn't want to have two separate audit trails as well, didn't we? We wanted to make sure that we just, there was one single audit trail and we interface directly into that, being Intune's audit trail, the source of truth. But it also reminds me that, yeah, like the process of going from like these conceptual ideas that we had to actually the boost extension that we have delivered today, that was quite a bit of a process, right? Because I wouldn't say the statement of work was the most detailed piece of work that was written. There was, there were some goals there. There were some very rough designs in terms of screens that we wanted. A mirror board with some outcomes, with some graph calls, with some actions. But I think there was probably a lot of, I don't know, gaps in between all of those bits and pieces that took us a long time to, I suppose, discover and define all of those bits. That was probably the bulk of the process, right?
Well, Boost is one of the first things that we ended up building, like kind of from scratch. Like we've built other features where it was just an addition to Workspace 360 or the platform, or we acquired some kind of tool that already existed. And Boost is technically like a new environment for us, as it's an extension. So it doesn't sit within our platform, and we kind of had to do that whole process from scratch in a way that I don't think we've had to do before.
Yeah, we did have to do some stuff on the main platform for it to work. There was quite a few other prerequisite and parallel projects, like the Basecamp. So our Entra authentication authorization work was a key prerequisite, because we wanted it to have that modern authentication front door. And of course, we're also not just automating those Intune actions, we're also doing this sort of data fusion between the Intune app data and data we have in the Remo free platform as well. So we had to build some new APIs to bring that data into the extension as well.
Yeah, from a marketing perspective, I feel like Boost is one of our most valuable products to date, just because we target enterprises. And one of the reasons why an enterprise might not have moved to Intune is because they're worried about losing that functionality and that control that you have in Config Manager. So then we can turn around and say, oh, don't worry about it. Migrate to Intune and we've got you with this extension. At the same time, now that we're trying to also target SMBs, most SMBs have already moved to Intune. And now we also have this same tool that we can turn around and say, hey, we can make your life easier with Intune. So I feel like when you look at our whole product architecture, I think this extension probably is one of our most valuable offerings.
I definitely agree. I think it's awesome, and I think it grabs a lot of attention, and I really hope people love it and give us feedback to help us shape the future direction of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the versatility, as you said there, Sabrina, is a great strength of it. And yeah, it will be interesting to see what people want to do next, because we know all too well that we can sit here and sort of speculate about all of these cool things it can do. And yeah, I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see what actually grabs customers, from both the enterprise and the those smaller organizations, to sort of see what they what they feel it could add for them as well, in especially with that contextual presence of the plugin. When you go into your compliance policies and everything, what could the plugin do? When you go into devices, what could it do? So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, bulk deletion is sort of very high up on my list. Definitely just clearing up Intune. It's such a nightmare to just delete a bloody app in Intune. It really is. Like if you've got dependencies or some other stuff, you have to go in, you have to strip all of those out first, and then it finally lets you delete it. So just basic cleanup is just a hard thing in Intune.
I was just about to say that I believe that the beauty of that it was designed in Intune and designed for Intune. This plugin, it sits in Intune, and this gives us basically endless options and use cases to develop in the future to basically close some of the gaps or to enhance the Intune admin's experience with just various situations which you've already mentioned.
Yeah, like it's been mentioned there, like it falls outside of the main platform. Like I think that in itself, I think Arnold, from a development perspective, posed some challenges, right? Like one year it was a nice sort of fresh independent project, but it still needed to, like, there was still that interaction with the main dev team, and I know that was a fun, like a sort of a fun and unique experience for us where we learned a lot.
I think indeed we tick some boxes of different type of challenges while developing Intune Boost. First of everything, we haven't leveraged before like burst capacity to develop new projects. So that one on its own, it was a challenge starting with the vendor selection, and it was a very thorough process, and we very carefully choose the team to develop this new product. And there are a couple of reasons behind this. First of all, it's not the classic web application. It's a plugin. It's slightly different. And the concepts of developing it in its own, it brings a few challenges. We wanted to make sure that this plugin basically is context aware. So depending on what screens are you in Intune, the plugin it's gonna sync and it's gonna show you the appropriate content. I've already mentioned about the authentication and the authorization piece. And probably the bigger challenge there was that this product was developed in parallel with our central authentication and authorization system we were developing back those days. So there was a very tight interaction between the external team and our core team, and I'm really glad that it worked out very well, and the two teams, they just worked seamlessly on sorting out those challenges. The other challenge was probably this this concept which we wanted to introduce of scheduled app assignments. So Intune Boost offers you the possibility not just to trigger immediately assignments of the apps to different security groups, but you can also schedule it in different phases. And basically that action will be triggered in a certain amount of time. It could be days, it could be weeks. So keeping in mind the fact that we wanted to ensure that traceability of who performed the action and when in Intune, that brought us some technical challenge because we had to maintain like an Enter ID token and constantly refresh it in the background so that when the right time comes, for instance, in 3 days, we have a valid Entra token so that we can kick off the assignment process itself.
It also brought up other challenges whereby, let's say you want to automate the assignment of like 1,000 apps. So like, 100 apps to many groups. There's this lovely thing called graph throttling that kicks in, and suddenly you get all sorts of assignment failures left, right, and center.
Right.
Which was another fun scenario that wasn't fully anticipated. So yeah, building in sort of robustness, resilience to ensure that those issues aren't visible to the end user and everything looks smooth and beautiful and no problem. All of those are handled in the background to ensure nothing really fails. Like, yeah, that was That was fun.
That's a point of good UI UX.
Yeah. Like it's what, just everything swept under the rug.
Mm.
Yeah, you just pretend everything is really good on the front end.
Front end is, yeah, is, cocktails by the swimming pool and just don't look at the house on fire behind you or something. I don't know whether that analogy works, but yeah.
It's the classic swan analogy. The front end is the swan and the back end is the legs paddling underneath like crazy.
Well, maybe that's the topic of the next one is feedback, data, and insights, how we're evolving our approach to roadmap and feature suggestions and being more data driven.
Customers might like the sound of it on paper, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to use it.
There you go. Don't use up all of our content, Andrew, already. Save it for the next one.